When you think about LSU football, a lot of people automatically think of the Les Miles era, and he was one of the more iconic coaches of this century with his hat, his clap, and some of his quotes. He had great moments at LSU, was seen as one of the next great coaches, and even was going to build a lasting legacy at Kansas, but in early March of 2021, reports from 2013 surfaced that he had inappropriate relations with females at LSU, and as of March 8, 2021, he was let go by Kansas, and he is no longer a head football coach. With all this happening, I thought tonight would be a great time to take a look back at Les Miles, his time at LSU and Kansas, and why he ultimately got fired and put in hot water. Today's video is going to be a long one, so be sure to let me know your thoughts on him and his football teams during that time. The channel has taken a nosedive in views as of late, so if you want to support what I'm doing here, please be sure to give the video a like, let me know your thoughts, subscribe if you're new, suggest another topic I can do next, and be sure to turn on post notifications so you get notified every time I upload. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about the tragic downfall of Les Miles. Like always, we need to go back in time and talk about how Les Miles became a big-time coach to begin with. His real name is Leslie, and he was born in a town of Ohio, and his father was named Bubba, who was a long-haul truck driver. The town had about 50,000 people, so it was pretty good-sized, and Les became an all-state caliber lineman there. He also lettered in baseball and wrestling, but was so good at football that he accepted a scholarship to play for the Michigan Wolverines. In 1980, his college career came to an end, and he took a job with the Michigan staff as a graduate assistant. He did so well that by 1995, he had quickly climbed the coaching ladder and held various positions for the Wolverines, but after that, he had a rift with the school and decided to head elsewhere. He took the offensive coordinator job at Oklahoma State and did such a great job there that he got a job coaching tight ends for the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL. In 2001, he really burst onto the national scene as he was hired to be the next head coach of Oklahoma State, and he returned to the Cowboys. While there, he helped them upset number 4 Oklahoma in year 1, and then led the Cowboys to 3 straight bowl games and even a 9-win season. In his second year particularly, he beat Oklahoma again and was named both the Big 12 and National Coach of the Year. After that, he took the LSU job, and you could say that the Les Miles era got off to a stormy start. Literally. Hurricane Katrina messed up the first 2 games, and their first SEC game was against Tennessee, and that was delayed by another hurricane as well. His on-the-field performance was off the charts though, as he helped them beat 4 ranked teams in the regular season, including a win over Alabama. They lost to Georgia in the SEC championship game, but they finished the year with a huge win over number 9 Miami in the Peach Bowl, and the Tigers finished ranked number 5. In 2006, LSU finished the regular season with a 10-2 record and ended the year with 6 straight victories. This season marked the first time in LSU history that the Tigers finished with back-to-back 10-win seasons. Despite the 10 wins, they finished second in the West to Arkansas and were invited to play Notre Dame in their bowl game, which they would win. In 2007, Miles gained national attention due to numerous unconventional play calls during nationally televised games, and LSU was ranked number 1 twice during that season, but they lost to number 17 Kentucky in triple overtime, and then lost to unranked Arkansas 50-48, which was also in triple overtime. But this was the 2007 season, of course, so this kind of stuff happened every weekend it seems. Because Missouri lost to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, and West Virginia lost at home to Pitt, LSU found themselves in the national championship. The 2007 squad was led by Matt Flynn at quarterback, Jacob Hester at running back, and wide receivers Brandon LaFell, Demetrius Byrd, and Early Doucette. They faced off with Ohio State in the national title game and won 38-24, and became the first 2-loss champion in a long time. At this point, Les Miles' stock was soaring, and he could be seen as the next great coach in college football. But let's rewind a few weeks earlier, because many thought he'd be at a different school in 2008. Before the SEC championship game, Kirk Herbstreit said on College Game Day that Les had accepted the job at Michigan after the season was over. But this was actually false, and he had to come out with a statement. He said, quote, "There was some misinformation on ESPN, and I think that it's imperative that I straighten it out. I am the head coach at LSU. I will be the head coach at LSU. I have no interest in talking to anybody else. I've got a championship game to play, and I'm excited about the opportunity of my damn strong football team to play in it." That's really all I'd like to say. It was unfortunate that I had to address my team with this information this morning. With that being done, I think we'd be ready to play. There will be no questions for me. I represent me in this issue. Please ask me after. I'm busy. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Later on, it would surface that he talked to Michigan's athletic director, and some thought he was going to take the Michigan job once again, but Les had to come out and say that he was just offering advice on the coaching search, and I bet he was so tired of all the drama going on, but that's just part of what happens as a big-time college football coach. All the speculation would finally come to an end when West Virginia's Rich Rodriguez would take the Michigan job, and everyone finally shut up. In 2008, they were led by Jarrett Lee at quarterback and Charles Scott at running back, and the Tigers would have to rebuild as their star defensive coordinator Bo Pelini took the Nebraska job, and Early Doucette left for the NFL. They beat number 10 Auburn early on, but they definitely had a down year as they lost 5 of their last 8 games with a 7-5 regular season record. They beat Georgia Tech in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, and Les Miles was 4-0 in bowl games at LSU. In 2009, Jordan Jefferson took over at quarterback, and yes, that is the older brother of LSU star and current Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson. Brandon LaFell was the team's star wide receiver, and they had a young Patrick Peterson on the roster as well. They once again had a ton of attrition on the coaching staff, but the season went pretty smoothly. They started out 5-0 and were ranked as high as number 4, but they lost to Florida, Alabama, and Ole Miss in the regular season to finish with a 9-3 record. Les lost his first bowl game of his career to Penn State in the Citrus Bowl, and many were hoping that 2010 they would get back to the title picture. Jefferson was back at quarterback, Stephen Ridley emerged at running back, and they had a young wide receiver star in Ruben Randall, and Tyrann Mathieu was on the defense now with Peterson. They started out 7-0 with 3 wins over ranked teams, but they lost their top 10 matchup with number 4 Auburn, which was led by Cam Newton, and sadly this would put them behind the 8 ball in the SEC West race. They weren't going to win the division, but all hope was lost when they lost to Arkansas to finish the regular season. They beat Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl at least though, and this was a solid 11-win campaign for LSU. 2011 saw Jarrett Lee and Jefferson both see time at quarterback, plus they brought in Georgia transfer Zach Mettenberger to sit on the bench. They are loaded as they had Michael Ford, Spencer Ware, and Alfred Blue as running backs. Ruben Randall and Odell Beckham were young stars at wide receiver, and you also can't forget they had a young Jarvis Landry and a defense that was loaded at every position with guys like the Honey Badger, Brandon Taylor, and Eric Reed. They were definitely a title contending team and had a real chance to win it all. They beat number 3 Oregon in the first game of the season and went on to also beat number 25 Mississippi State and number 16 West Virginia on the road in weeks 3 and 4, and this team was pretty special. They took down ranked Auburn and Florida teams, plus they beat Tennessee, and they were sitting pretty at number 1 in the country, and the game of the century was upon them. Games like this don't happen very often, but in 2011 they faced off number 2 Alabama, and after a defensive slugfest, the Tigers beat the Tide in overtime off of a field goal, and they won 9-6 and were in the driver's seat to the national title game. They won their next 2 games before they had one final test against number 3 Arkansas. I cannot get over just how loaded the SEC used to be. The Tigers beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, and to this point they had beaten 8 ranked teams to get to this point. And they had beaten 8 ranked teams to get to the national title game. Talk about a battle-tested team who actually played a real schedule. This was the year of the BCS controversy as Alabama would get in over Oklahoma State after the Cowboys blew it on the road to Iowa State, and there would be a rematch in the title game. It didn't go well, but after all, Nick Saban was an elite coach and knew what he was doing, and in their return to the title game, Alabama would shut out LSU 21-0, and it was clear that Alabama would be the 2011 national champion, despite LSU beating them earlier in the year. This was a tough pill for LSU fans to swallow, and losing to Alabama would start to become the biggest hurdle for Les Miles. Going into 2012, Zach Mettenberger became the starter at quarterback, and out of nowhere, Jeremy Hill became the star running back, and the duo of Landry and Beckham at wide receiver had just begun. They started out 5-0 and then lost to number 10 Florida State, but the season wasn't over yet as they beat number 3 South Carolina, and then Johnny Manziel led A&M, who was ranked number 20 in the country as well, and that was their first year in the SEC. Sadly, they couldn't get it done against Alabama, and the title hopes are once again over. They did win their last 3 games to finish at 10-2, but they lost to Clemson by 1 in their bowl game. They returned to every major starter in 2013 and were once again expected to make a title run. They beat TCU to start off the year, but blew a game to Georgia and Ole Miss in late October, and the title dreams were out the window once again. They lost to Alabama again, but at least to give the fans something, they upset number 9 Texas A&M to finish the year. They beat Iowa in their bowl game, and it was a pretty forgettable and underachieving 10-win season. 2014 was sort of a new beginning for Miles, as he had major struggles at quarterback, with Anthony Jennings and Brandon Harris both taking turns. They ended up losing 4 regular season games, including an overtime loss to Alabama. The highlight came in their huge win over number 3 Ole Miss, and they finished with a win over Texas A&M at home to finish with an 8-4 regular season record. They lost to Notre Dame in the Music City Bowl, and 2015 was going to need to be a huge year for Miles. He would have some help at running back as they had Leonard Fournette, Darius Geis, and Darrell Williams, and that was quite the backfield. They started out great as they beat number 25 Mississippi State, number 18 Auburn, and Syracuse, then an easy win before they beat South Carolina and number 8 Florida, and they were 7-0 and a legit title contending team. Sadly, they lost to Alabama and then blew games to Arkansas and Ole Miss, and the season would vanish before their eyes. They finished 9-3 after starting 7-0, and the fan base was upset. They did beat Texas A&M in the bowl game, but that was an overrated team, and that was not enough to calm the Flames. He was on the hot seat going into 2016 and brought in an experienced quarterback to try and help, and he came from Purdue, and his name was Danny Etling. They did lose to Wisconsin in Week 1, won 2 games, and then lost to Auburn, and this was the nail in the coffin for Miles, as both him and offensive coordinator Cam Cameron were fired. They chose to promote Ed Orgeron to head coach over Dave Aranda, and since then, LSU won a title with Joe Burrow, and they're in a pretty solid spot. Miles left LSU as the second winningest coach in school history, and he was going to get another job. He was rumored to numerous head coaching vacancies over the years, but he did not accept a job until 2019 when he agreed to become the new head coach of Kansas. The Jayhawks are the K-State of the 21st century and have not been relevant since Mark Mangino left. He'd be in for a tall task, but if anyone could turn around Kansas, many thought Miles was one of the few. Going into 2019, they had a veteran quarterback in Carter Stanley, a star freshman big recruit in Puka Williams Jr., and 2 talented wide receivers in Andrew Parchment and Stephon Robinson Jr. They actually showed some flash in 2019, as after they lost to Coastal Carolina, they went on the road and beat Boston College. They played West Virginia really tough. They actually had a game in the first half with Oklahoma, but they lost both and were 2-4. Then they were actually on the road, converted a 2-point conversion, and were beating number 15 Texas, but the Longhorns made a couple late plays and won the game off a game-winning field goal, and this sucked for Kansas fans, and I remember wishing Kansas won. They beat Texas Tech for their first conference win, and then they played 3 straight teams that were ranked number 22 in the country, and I found that pretty funny. They lost all of them and then got pounded by Baylor to finish the season at 3-9, but they showed flash and promise in year 1. Stanley was an underrated quarterback, and Puka Williams was a first-team All-Big 12 selection, so there was some hype going into 2020, but they would need a new quarterback, and that became a major problem in 2020. At one point, they had a 17-year-old freshman by the name of Jalen Daniels starting, and with Puka Williams opting out, Khalil Herbert leaving for Virginia Tech, and Stephon Robinson disappearing, the Jayhawks struggled tremendously at every position in 2020. They lost to Coastal Carolina to start the season again, and this was seen as a terrible loss at first, but we all know that Chanticleers ended up becoming pretty good. They gave up 47 points to Baylor, who was one of the 5 worst offenses in all of college football, and even lost to Texas Tech, who was pretty much at their level with how bad they've been. They went winless for the 3rd time in school history and the 2nd time since 2015, and they were historically bad, but Les had the 6th best class in the Big 12 in terms of recruiting, so there was some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. Sadly, their 2 best playmakers in Stephon Robinson and Andrew Parchment both transferred to Northwestern and Florida State respectively, so Les would have to find all new guys, but they said they'd give him a chance at least. They sucked, but recruits saw a vision, and he was going to have a chance, and then all the news started to drop this week. For a lot of LSU fans, this news was pretty shocking, but for Kansas fans, it was pretty much expected, and a paragraph by a columnist puts it into the words perfectly. Quote, Jayhawk football has been a historic mess even before KU fired Mark Mangino 12 years ago. The worst stretch of on-field and off-field results in major college history. It's nothing to enjoy, but here in the Big 12, we have box seats for college football at its lowest. This is the Kansas State in the darkest days, only to toss a scandal on top of it. This is tough, and I feel bad for all Kansas fans out there, but what exactly happened to Les Miles that was brought to attention? Well, he was accused by multiple females of inappropriate behavior, including allegations he contacted them via Facebook and texting, would meet them off campus alone, and even kissed at least one of them. Miles is alleged to have instructed his football operator. To make matters worse, he also intervened to make sure female student employees were blonde, attractive, and fit in order to lure top recruits to play for LSU, and employees who didn't fit the criteria were given fewer hours or lost their jobs entirely, and that is just horrible to hear. There was an apparent report of this in 2013, and some wanted Miles fired, but that did not end up happening, and it sort of went under the rug. This was stupid for Miles to do, and as of a couple days ago, he was put on leave at Kansas, but as of March 8th, which is yesterday, Kansas decided to part ways with Les Miles and had this to say. Quote, I'm extremely disappointed for our university, fans, and everyone involved with our football program. There's a lot of young talent on this football team, and I have no doubt we will identify the right individual to lead this program. We will begin the search for a new head coach immediately with an outside firm to assist in this process. We need to win football games, and that is exactly what we're going to do. as Bill Self is already under investigation himself, and it's just not a good time to be a Kansas sports supporter, as basketball is really the only thing the school has going for them. In terms of his success at LSU, Miles won 114-34 during his time at LSU, and even won a national championship in 2007, but his inability to win another one, the inability for LSU to reach the title game, and sort of the program going backwards was what ultimately got him fired. He was one of those coaches that set such a high mark at the beginning of his coaching career that since he didn't hit it in his last few years, he was fired. And at Kansas, this could have been a really good thing for his resume, as they are pretty much the worst Power 5 program ever and definitely the toughest job in college football right now. And if he could have saved them, that would have been great for his legacy. But unfortunately, because of his past actions, he will not get a chance to do that, and we'll see if he ever gets another job again. Knowing how this world works, I know he'll get another job at some point, somewhere, and I hope Les Miles learns from his mistakes and becomes a better person from this. I really enjoyed making today's video, and this was definitely a longer one, so let me know what you think of the Les Miles era, his LSU football teams, and if you're a Kansas fan, let me know what you think of the program and where they're going to go next. If you want to support what I'm doing here, please be sure to give the video a like, as that will help more people be able to see it. Drop your comments and suggestions to help the video get in the algorithm, and check out all my other videos just like this, and all my videos about the rise and fall of coaches. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.